So we're going to hear right off the top from Gabriel Sidhom from Orange Labs up in San Francisco, and Sailesh from Truviso. And they're going to talk to us about some really interesting things they've done in terms of partnership and how their partnership got put into place. We'll have a discussion over here. So thank you very much. I'll take the far chair.
I guess you wanted to.
Great. Okay, well, we agreed that we should kick off with some introductions so people understand who your companies are. So I think everybody knows Orange, Gabriel, but maybe are less familiar with the labs south of San Francisco. But if you could introduce yourself a little bit.
So I'm Gabriel Sidhom. I'm the in charge of the technology development for our innovation center. We're part of we have labs and innovation centers throughout the world. The key area, I mean, of course, we're in our operating markets, which is the core markets being France, Poland, UK, and Switzerland. We have our growth in mobile has been very strong in the Middle East and Africa. That's where we're getting a lot of our growth.
Yep.
I saw you had our revenue number for mobile was maybe a little underestimated. Basically, over half of our revenues are coming from wireless data and voice. And so the Innovation Center has been here for 10 years, so it's great to see some of our brethren also coming here, because for a long time we always get the question, well, there's no one else here. Why are you guys here with 70 people, which is about the size of our lab? So we thought that was great.
Great. All right, thank you. And Sailesh, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and Truviso?
Sure. So I'm Sailesh Krishnamurthy. I'm one of the founders of Truviso. We started Truviso about 5 years back, and it's a commercialization of some really revolutionary data management work from UC Berkeley. So maybe I could get into some into a short presentation and quickly go over kind of what we do.
All right, let's start it.
So Truviso is focused on on solving the data challenges, the big data challenges, and providing immediate insight on this big data. And in particular, we are focusing on not just the volume problem, but also the velocity problem. So the volume problem is well understood. We all know that people are producing, businesses producing lots and lots of data, and this is driven by lots of different things: click streams, online advertising, online video. These are the big, new, explosive aspects. But we also talked about mobile and mobile voice. Call detail records are also exploding, along with the increase in the actual mobile subscribers. So all of these are, I think, huge opportunities for where we see growth of volume. But we're also seeing the challenge of growth in velocity. So an interesting trend is that data is arriving much faster than the available storage. So this chart actually shows the amount of data being produced in the world and the available storage capacity. And if you can see, the gap between the two is actually increasing. So Truviso is actually focused on solving the problem, bridging this gap. And the way we bridge that gap is we have a new data management approach, which rather than taking data first and storing it on a file system or a database and then asking queries, we've built a continuous analytics technology platform, which can be used which can be used to process data in real time, so that as this vast volume of data is going through the system, in one pass, you can extract enough value out of the data and deliver insights.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, and it dovetails nicely with customer expectations. I think one thing that the internet has done is made people impatient. Mm-hmm. And now even in service, when people have a problem, they expect a resolution in real time. Mm-hmm. And so this type of analysis would allow us to maybe anticipate where a problem may occur. And I'll talk a little more about that later.
All right.
Anyone who's looked at the big data problem, I'm sure most of the people in this room are well aware of it. They've probably read the Economist article and the McKinsey article. But really, there's this explosion of data and an associated revenue opportunity. And I'll just focus on the telco aspect. So I think service providers and carriers are estimated to see an almost $100 billion revenue opportunity. just dealing with this data problem to solve the kinds of problems that Gabe was talking about and various other problems.
So you think $100 million per carrier is like on average is what you're saying, or $100 million in industry?
100 billion, I think, per the industry.
Okay.
Not per carrier, presumably.
You said billion then?
Billion.
Okay.
Billion, yes, with a big B. So yeah, I think that's a huge opportunity, and I think there's an associated value for end users. I mean, there's value not just from products that work better, but I think from new services that can be offered because you have the data management platforms in place to deal with this data.
Right. And so when we look at the kind of areas where we want to, where we're seeing these problems. One is, of course, in differentiation of our services, unique services. I think the whole explosion in internet, the role that people like Google and Facebook and Twitter are playing is really opening up a lot of opportunities for telcos, for us to sort of ride on that information using the APIs of these companies. The other type of, okay, this is, here we go. Okay, and then the other type is the service types of issues that we have. And as I said earlier, being able to anticipate something going on and intervening right away. So it doesn't wait till it gets to be a problem and then you have to roll trucks,
yep.
Which people, customers do not like that. I mean, anyway, so.
So I think the really interesting thing here is the vast kinds, the variety of the data that telcos are right in the middle of, right from CDRs.
I guess what we've seen happen is where the phone was before, like I said, just a voice device. It's now the phone and computers and everything are loaded up with sensors, loaded up with input devices like cameras, ability to capture people's tweets. The amount of data gathering that's going on and is incredible. And that data might be interesting if you could gather it up and analyze it. But individually, like as we see, we can follow tweet trends now and see what's trending and what's hot topics. That's the kind of thing that you can do now in real time. But you can associate it across more than just tweets, right? You can tie it into other sources of data that telco has.
Absolutely. I think there's some incredible opportunities to associate with other kinds of sources of data. But I think there's also regulatory hurdles, especially in Europe, where some of this is harder to accomplish. Right. But the point about sensors is interesting because back 6-7 years back when we were an academic research project, a big motivation for our work was all about dealing with sensors. So we had this hypothesis that if the sensor guys get their act together, there'll be this vast volume of data you can do something interesting with. When we started the company, we felt that was still 10 years out. But maybe this is part of the trend that'll get us there.
Yeah. In sensors, there's a lot of health applications. You could imagine a service where using the microclimates of certain areas, giving warning to asthmatics into what parts of the city they should stay away in real time. And so the real-time information is really what's creating new services. It's creating new customer service opportunities. Mm-hmm. And that's really how to exploit that is one of the things that we've been exploring with Truviso and with some of our own studies we've done in that area.
Let me ask you, Sailesh, we talk about a lot of cool, complicated ideas where you plow through in real time a massive amount of data and come with interesting conclusions. But can you do simple stuff too, like as carriers push towards cap services, the customer really wants to know in real time how much data they've used. And typically right now, what you would get is a little warning that says, this may not be your actual data use. This is your data use as of yesterday noon or something like that. Can you make that real time as well?
Absolutely. That's a great use case. And I think it ties to something that we like to do a lot. It's our view, it's our hypothesis, that the analytics business, which today is very much tied into a back office function, driven primarily by the batch constraints of existing systems, where people come in and look, is the system working well, and things of that nature. I think there's a trend that's going to let people weave the results of analytics into the products and services that end users see. We already see this today in the web with YouTube and things like that. You can see what content is actually up. And the key to being able to do that is to be able to process, as you said, these vast flows of information and deliver them to the end user directly. And we have some other examples of that. We'd also talk about where we weave analytics into the end user. And I'll just add, it used to be that this kind of capacity was available to people like Google, but I think one of some of the things that we and our other colleagues and competitors in the industry have done is really make this available on a much more wider scale.
So quick question, why would it be available to Google but not to telcos?
I think it's just the amount of scale. The Google approach to handling a lot of data is really to leverage their big data center operations, to throw a lot of scale at it, and also to build a lot of custom technology. But what we've done is taken the best of that approach to be able to parallelize, but deliver it in a product and in a package that's easy to use, well understood, and very standard, which fits better with the telco part.
Yeah. And we have a lot to learn from the way Google is using this data. Like one thing that's always struck me as really interesting is that by having access to all the data of people misspelling or entries, it helps Google in coming back to you and proposing what you really mean. Mm-hmm. And it's even used in their voice search function. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to be learned about what you can do with massive data and in real time. All right, so we're going to talk a little about what the partnership is about. So just a collaboration method. I mean, one of the key reasons we're here we want to shorten the time to market of innovation because of how fast innovation cycle. And so as Derek was saying, it's always been a big issue because as in all large companies, we have roadmaps, and those tend to be locked up for 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, depending on the type of services. And so it's very important for us, if we're going to introduce an innovation, you have to either learn how to if you will, stop the roadmap, so, and come in and, put something in. So I like to say, trying to find the Control-Alt-Delete for a roadmap, just to pause it. But that's, very hard to do, especially if you're doing a billing innovation or, you're putting in some billing features. So, our model is one of co-development. We tend to look at something that's, cresting, that, maybe in 2-3 years, really in 2 years is where we hope to start commercializing it. Now, of course, as Derek said, the most startups don't have runway for that. Right. So that's why we're using a model of co-development where in that space of time where we're preparing the prototype or the demo to show the company, adapting it to show it to our business units, we're actually working together, and creating value both for us as well as for the startup with which we're working.
Interesting. Now, what stage was Truviso at? What was your most recent round? Just so we can kind of place.
Oh, we had a round of funding in 2009.
2009.
So that was our second round of funding.
Yep. Okay. And is among the carriers you're most down the road with, is Orange your leading partner?
In terms of carriers, yes, it's Orange. We also work with other people in the telco space, with CDNs, for instance, and it's certainly a trend that CDNs are also trying to go and sell into the carriers. Mm-hmm. I would add that from an entrepreneur's perspective, in addition to selling directly to carriers, I think it's also very interesting to work with the vendors, the other more established vendors, the Huawei's of the world, the Ericssons of the world, things like that, and we do a lot of that as well.
Yep. Yeah.
One thing I'd just like to add to this whole partnership thing, I mean, as you pointed out, Derek, I mean, patience is obviously important. Mm-hmm. Our perspective as a platform vendor is, inherently that we understand and recognize the need for the patients. It's all about sowing the seeds. Sometimes it's not going to come, but you have to put in that work. Yep. It's not going to grow on its own. But the best thing about working with Orange from our perspective, was they put skin in the game. Mm-hmm. They worked with us arm in arm in developing these things. They put their resources. So from our perspective, it was a sign of commitment, something we could go back to our board and our investors and say, look, we're not just blowing some smoke here.
Right. So you're not in talks. You're actually working with them.
Right, and we actually had real money out of it. So I think it made a difference.
Good. Thanks.
Okay, so we launched a series of 4 projects. Some of them we're working on right now. Some of them we've worked in the past 18 months. Mm-hmm. And the first one, the one I think that has the most promise right now is in the IPTV and over-the-top TV areas. For one thing, I think as Orange has come to the realization that we can't make this difference anymore, this distinction between IPTV and over-the-top television services. And so we've been, in our TV service, we've launched both types of properties. So we do have some over-the-top channels. We made a major investment in Daily Motion, and so which is in Europe is providing the same types of services as YouTube. And so the first area was on IPTV and over-the-top analytics. That's really we thought a high-value area because it's also a growth area for Orange, and especially as we start deploying fiber in our networks. The two other areas was more on real-time. One was on real-time location, and really talking about location services, using that, such as, for example, I used the idea of the health service, being able to in real time send to somebody's location the situation, the weather, or the pollen count, or whatever, quality of air. The other area, of course, is in advertising, real-time advertising, using location and being able to send people, some suggestions or some ads. We made a distinction between the two because it's two very different worlds. And then the other area which was mentioned was to mine social media information, Twitter and so on, and try to link it to what's going on in our network and to see if there is correlation.
So what kind of links would you be looking for between a social network?
Well, like for example, this happened in Egypt during the revolution, right? Yeah. We have a property in Egypt, so there was an obvious one where you're able to start seeing that there's going to be more and more traffic going through your network, and to try to do some things. Of course, we didn't stop the traffic. That really was more of a governmental decision. So that's the kind of thing. But other things is that, for example, if there's a viral video on YouTube or on Daily Motion,
yes,
and you start seeing, people talking about it, yeah.
So you would track that video is being watched a lot,
right? And then you see the correlation on your network. So that's what the real time starts giving you. So just in terms of the real-time analytics, so we have our content creators. These are, which could either be YouTube, which we don't really have a direct relationship with, or TF1 or Canal Plus, which are people that are, they're content creators that are providing services over our IPTV network, and just going through the middle could either be a CDN, or in our case, it's just our network that we've built out for IPTV, and going to the consumers. And so you have two flows of data. You're seeing what the consumers are doing. It's coming back. It's informing some of our network policies. It's informing more of our development of, maybe deciding what we show or what type of ads we show. And it's also information that's going to our content suppliers, and they can see in real time what's going on with their service.
So if you're a TV station, you could see web stores have often said, hey, we can follow the clicks and see when we lost the purchase. So now TF1 can say, hey, we can follow our broadcast and see when we lost the viewership.
Yeah. And this is just an example of the type of dashboard. Jump in if you want to talk about it. Yeah. And so you see on the right, we're seeing in real time what's happening to throughput on the IPTV network. We're seeing what are the trending in real time, what people are showing, what they're turning on, and this is a report that goes to an audience report for our content partners, and there they can see where people are engaged versus where they're not too engaged, where they're doing other things, which we know because they're clicking or
So Sailesh, this is a real-time data that the advertiser might be able to call up, correct?
Right.
Well, that's useful for them. Now, is it so real-time that graph would actually be moving, or is it refresh?
Oh, no, not refresh. It's actually pushing all the way out to the client. Yeah. There are multiple uses, by the way, for this. One, of course, in addition to everything that Gabriel said, there is live events. Live events are, I think, a huge place where knowing what's going on right now is so critical.
Right.
But I would add that the Truviso technology, while the first order impact is an immediate insight. One of the things that we really learned was processing the data is so much faster when the data is on the move that it's what I said earlier. In that one pass of the data, you can extract enough information. So the uses extend beyond real-time analytics. It also gets you to pre-compute enough information to answer your historical analytics very efficiently.
Yep.
So there's a performance argument there too.
Great. All right.
And one of the very interesting trends, I think, tying back to my earlier comment on analytics as content, I think a very interesting trend we are seeing right now is a way to get set-top boxes actually be user-friendly through smartphone applications. And the first iterations of all of this were you'd use your smartphone app as a remote, but kind of what you picked, the discovery, was more of a traditional TV guide experience. What you can now do with real time is, because you know what's going on, you can actually provide recommendations on kind of what's hot, what are people watching. And so that essentially turns the experience of an individual watching TV to a shared experience.
So somebody have a smartphone as a remote control for the TV, and as Gabriel said, you can censor your network. Hey, everybody just flipped over to, September 11th would be the news, for example. But so you could be watching a soap opera and have your smartphone give you an alert that massive amount of people are just watching this other program. You might be interested as well.
Exactly, and depending on how you personalize this, where we'd like to go is provide voluntary opt-in of social credentials. You could even fine-tune that. What are my friends watching, not just what are the world watching. So the opportunities, I think, are huge to make it a social experience. And ultimately, what that means is make the experience more sticky, make people spend more time watching.
Great.
And then this is just an indicator of the social media insights, what we're can discover from just mining the social media information.
Great.
Right.
Is that are we having more slides? Because I think we are about time we should go to Q&A. If are there more or not?
Well, there was the
right.
So let's on kind of the innovation areas we're focusing on in this year. And this is available, but one is, of course, big data. We really think there is a major opportunities for Orange in this area in a lot of dimensions, both in the back end as well as in developing services. I'm not going to give. I don't think I'll have time to go through all of this. Radio. As we all know, as caps are coming on, it's being very important that the terminals themselves start optimizing. So cognitive radio is really an area we're looking at. Seamless handoff between Wi-Fi and other technologies and 3G and 4G, I think is very important. And just going on, I think that if we look at the enterprise area, I think that we for a long time have lived under the shadow of the flat world, the hypothesis. Not sure that that can be proven, unless it's not true for the Silicon Valley. But we think of enterprises as becoming porous, as opening themselves up, shrinking in size, and relying much more on what can happen outside the walls. And so this is one area we're looking a lot about new, like ad hoc collaboration tools. Where used to be 10, 15 years ago, we had EDI was kind of the concept. But I think we need something much more dynamic where two companies using different emails or different collaboration system can actually, on an ad hoc basis, interconnect and exchange and partner. The other area is in there is the ability to meld or to converge social networks, because today we either have inside our company there's social tools, and we know some of those suites, and then most of us have a sort of an ad hoc social network called LinkedIn or whatever, sometimes Facebook, where we put it together. But there is no, the two are very hard to put together. It's just a personal thing that if I'm going to work with a partner, if people happen to be in my LinkedIn network, then I'll use that tool. But I think there's the professional social network should be a cloud that goes outside of the enterprise. And the enterprise can use it as well as the individual.
So, and just one note for everybody in the audience. All of the PowerPoint slides that we see today will be available for Telecom Council members. The Telecom specifically, every phone company that speaks to us will probably have a slide that looks a lot like this, and that'll be not only available to members, but we'll also make an amalgamation of them all, and we'll have them all available to everybody, because we want the entire Silicon Valley community to kind of be able to see the areas that they're interested in partnering with. So you don't need to jot these down. You can if you want, but we'll also make that available later on. through the Telecom Council website. So a question, we'll go to Q&A. So if I could ask Aaron to bring up the house lights, and then I'm going to point out we have Vin and Eric have microphones for Q&A. So Eric's there, and Vin is, Stephanie's over on the side. So if you have a question, put your hand up. One of them will go to you. We have time for a couple of questions. I'll ask Gabriel, I have a question for each of you before we go to the audience. And so Gabriel, you've given us your areas of interest. Can you suggest to us the method and the mechanics for getting in with Orange, whether it's through the labs in San Francisco or through France or some other region? What's the best way to get in touch?
Well, I think for, being that we're the Silicon Valley, if you will, emanation of Orange, probably for local companies anyway, it's best to come through us if there isn't already contact with Orange. And then we go through a process of evaluating. We'll try we'll evaluate the technology, or if it's hardware, we'll also do that, or chips or whatever. And we have,
so obviously people can chat with you today and
sure,
get your
yeah,
card.
Yeah.
Is there a website or a URL? Like if somebody just wanted to contact you out of the blue from Silicon Valley, how would they get a hold of Orange Silicon Valley?
Well, we're working on having a website. We don't have one. It's probably no secret, but the branding of our company is changing.
Yep.
Yeah. So once that happens, then there'll be a local website.
So less France Telecom, and now it's going to all Orange, correct?
Yeah, it's already the brand outside of the core markets like Europe and Poland. Probably 80% of our users are under a Orange brand rather than a Orange France Telecom brand.
Okay, great. So the real advice today is get a hold of you at some point today.
Yeah, and today there are a few other people from the labs.
You want to stand them up?
Maybe you want to just raise your hand.
So
okay.
Orange, France Telecom people, I recognize Asha and some other people there. Great. Okay, so before we go to question, I got one for Sailesh, and that is, we did the case study. We understand where you come from now, the partnership you have. Tell us quickly about the meeting process. How did you start with Orange?
I think it's a little bit like what I said earlier. Sowing the seeds. I think our first interaction was with not with the actual group that we ended up talking to, and I ended up going and giving a presentation to a big data group that was I think early in the process of exploration, yep. and then it was a lot of legwork and following up and trying to figure out the right contacts. And when we met, it was Asha's group. We met her, and then we found the right things to work.
Your first presentation was in France, or was it here?
No, it was here. It was to another group.
Done locally.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we actually first heard about you through Berkeley. Through our research we were doing with area universities. So
right. The other founder of the company, Professor Mike Franklin, he's a full professor at UC Berkeley, and I think Orange is also participating in the research lab there.
Great. So it's you and everybody has their fingers out trying to source these things and make that marriage happen. We'll take our first question from the aisle here.
Hi, my name is Ram. I do product marketing at Smith Micro. Good presentation, thank you. The question is, you mentioned about the high velocity of data. Can you share some insights on what is the scale that we're talking about here?
Right. So our system can be since we can run it in parallel, we can handle very large volumes of data. But roughly what we're talking about is on a single node basis. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of events a second. So that's normally kind of what we target, and this kind of capacity is really necessary for dealing with the kinds of high video and these kinds of data rates. Of course, a lot of it depends on what you're doing. So I'm giving some representative numbers, but that's roughly kind of what we're talking about.
A question from Rick here in the middle.
Yeah, on one of the slides you had joint development that took place between the two of you. Could you expand on where the vast majority of that was? Was it getting his technology tied into your OSS and BSS systems? Did you have to write APIs to hook this in? Can you elaborate a little bit more on what that involved?
Sure. There were engineering resources, and product management resources on the Orange side. In fact, from a product management process, figuring out what the solution was, that was heavily driven by the folks in Orange, because they were the ones who had the relationship with the actual Orange in France. And we brought to the game the actual technology platform and some engineering work on top of it. So we actually formed a project and figured out, from multiple projects, figured out what needed to be done. In terms of the writing to the APIs, there was some work on both sides, but one of the things about the Truviso platform is it's a standard platform, standard APIs, looks and feels like a standard database. So it's very easy to get up and running really fast and build a quick prototype. Once we built a quick prototype, then it was the legwork of going and showing it to the, to the people in the countries and trying to figure out what made sense for them.
So we're going to take one more questions in the back, and then I see a lot of Telecom Council staff in the room, so I'll introduce you guys after because I want people to see who you are so they can ask you for help or introductions throughout the day. So don't leave the room if you're a Telecom Council staff. So we had one question in the back.
Yeah, hi, my name is Mark Bensadoun. I'm CEO of Newfield Wireless. Question for Gabriel. Could you describe your relationship with Orange Labs in France and how you determine what will be innovated internally within your own labs organization versus partnering with, for example, Silicon Valley companies?
All right. So when we were first created 10 years ago, we were part of the R&D lab network. And so the model is that we have labs in various parts of the world that are innovative, China, Tokyo, so on. We have a presence in Israel. And the decision, the initial decision as to what is innovative is up to the local entity. The way the budget is set up, I'd say historically probably half of what we did were on, coming from needs of the business units or some of the other labs. Like, for example, how to, they may have developed something and then they need to link into some APIs. We'd help them with that. And half was pushed from the local entities. Okay. And then there's a fairly standard process of going to the business units and the lines of business and gauging the interest of them for a service.
Does that get it?
But it's really, it comes from the extremes in. Now, that wasn't always the case, but this is where today the way Orange operates. And we've had with our new CEO, the real focus is in, partnering and buying rather than making, which is a major shift in our R&D policy.
Which is what we're seeing more of out here, I think.
Organizationally, you're now part of the corporate structure, though,
Yeah,
right?
we're part of the strategy and development group right now.
All right, so I'd like to thank you both very much, Gabriel and Sailesh. Thanks a lot for participating with us, sharing your case with us, and good luck to you in ongoing biz dev with carriers, and good luck to Orange as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.